The last train. The clock struck 11:45 p.m. as Evan hurried down the dimly lit platform of Westwood Station. The air was thick with an unsettling chill, and the usual hum of life seemed absent. The station, normally bustling with commuters, was eerily silent. The last train was due any moment, and he couldn't afford to miss it. As Evan sat on a cold metal bench, his eyes wandered to the flickering light above. It buzzed softly, casting long, distorted shadows on the tiled floor. He checked his phone. No signal. Typical. He sighed and leaned back, waiting for the familiar rumble of the train. A sudden clatter echoed down the empty platform. Startled, Evan shot up, peering into the darkness. "Hello?" he called out. His voice seemed to dissolve into the emptiness. A faint shuffle answered him, followed by silence. "It's probably just a rat," he muttered, trying to calm himself. Moments later, the sound of footsteps emerged, slow and deliberate. Evan's heart raced as he squinted into the shadows. A figure appeared, a man in a dark suit, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. "Waiting for the last train?" the man asked, his voice low and gravelly. Evan nodded, uneasy. "Yeah, should be here soon, right?" The man tilted his head, his face still hidden in shadow. "It always comes, but not everyone gets to leave." Before Evan could respond, the man turned and walked toward the edge of the platform, disappearing into the shadows as though he'd never been there. A distant rumble shook the ground. The train was approaching. Relieved, Evan stepped closer to the edge of the platform, peering down the tunnel. The train emerged, its headlights piercing through the dark. But something was off. The train wasn't the modern commuter line he expected. It was an old, rusted locomotive, its windows blackened and cracked. The doors screeched open, revealing a dimly lit interior. Evan hesitated. The carriages seemed empty, save for faint silhouettes seated in the shadows. "Get on!" a voice urged behind him. Evan spun around, but no one was there. The platform was empty, the eerie silence pressing down on him. The train's doors began to close, and without thinking, he jumped inside. The interior was colder than he'd expected, the air stale and heavy. The seats were torn, the walls lined with strange, unreadable symbols etched into the metal. Evan sat near the door, his unease growing with every second. The train jolted forward, and the lights flickered erratically. As the train gained speed, he noticed something strange. The windows didn't show the cityscape he was expecting. Instead, there was nothing but darkness. Occasionally, shapes flickered past the glass, twisted forms that seemed to writhe and claw at the train. The silhouettes he'd seen earlier began to move. Slowly, one by one, they turned their heads toward him. Their faces were wrong, blurred and featureless, as if erased. "Where is this train going?" Evan called out, his voice trembling. No one answered. Suddenly, the lights went out, plunging the carriage into total darkness. A cold hand brushed against his shoulder. The lights flickered back on, and the passengers were gone. Evan was alone in the carriage, or so he thought. At the far end of the train, the man in the dark suit and hat stood, his head tilted unnaturally. "You shouldn't have gotten on," the man said, his voice echoing through the carriage. Evan stumbled backward, panic surging through him. I didn't know. I just needed to get home." The man began to walk toward him, each step deliberate, his form distorting as he moved. "There's no going back," the man rasped. "You're part of the journey now." The train screeched to a halt, throwing Evan off his feet. The doors opened, revealing an endless void outside. "Get off," the man said, now looming over him. Terrified, Evan shook his head. "No, I won't. I'm not supposed to be here." The man reached down, his shadowy hands gripping Evan's shoulders. "Everyone gets a ticket eventually." Evan's screams echoed into the void as he was dragged off the train. The next morning, commuters at Westwood Station noticed something unusual. The faint sound of a train whistle echoing from the empty tunnel, long after the last train had departed. No one ever saw Evan again.